We'll now take a look at how to register your app so that it can listen for sensor events. So the first thing we do in our enableAccelerometerListening method, which as you recall is called from the onCreate method, is we use the inherited getSystemService method with the context.sensorServiceConstant to get a sensor manager service. So if I just go over to the context class documentation that I've already opened up here, you can see that when you pass the sensor service constant to that method, it gives you back a sensor manager object. Now if I go back to our code and I hover over getSystemService, you can see that it returns type object, but we want a sensor manager, so we have to cast it to the appropriate type, and you would do that with any type of Android system service that you get using this method. Now the next thing we do is we use the register listener method, and as you can see from the pop-up documentation here, this method is receiving as its arguments a sensor event listener, which is an object that you implement to say how to handle the events, a sensor object, which is the particular sensor you want to respond to, and an integer representing the rate at which you will receive those sensor events. Now, if you look at the rate constants, which are described down below here, you can see that there is sensor delay normal, delay UI, delay game, or delay fastest. And depending on which value you use, you will get sensor events at different rates of speed. But as you can also see from the documentation here, this is only a hint to the system, and that events may be received faster or slower than the specified rate. Usually they are received faster. So what we did is we simply set our sensor delay in this example to sensor delay normal, which seemed to work fine for the shaking of the device, which is what we're trying to test with the accelerometer. So we have as our three arguments to the register listener method the object sensor event listener, which we'll look at in the next video. You can see that defined down here. The second argument is the result of calling sensor manager's get default sensor method with the constant sensor.typeAccelerometer. Now if I go to the sensor class in the online documentation, we can take a look at the list of sensor constants that are available to you, and you can see that there's the accelerometer. You can listen to all sensors, gravity, gyroscope, light sensors, linear acceleration, etc., etc. So these are all different types of sensors that may be available on a given device. So just because you have these constants does not mean that you have the ability to test for all of these different types of sensors on a given app on a given device. So that's something that you have to consider when you're creating your app. So we'd like to respond to the accelerometer only in this example, and by calling getDefaultSensor with typeAccelerometer as an argument, we are saying only deliver accelerometer events to this app and ignore all other types of sensor events. Now, when the app is paused, we don't want to respond to those accelerometer events. So in that case, we have the disableAccelerometerListening method, which is called from onPause. And we first check to make sure that the sensor manager is not equal to null, because if for any reason we were unable to obtain the sensor manager, we would not want to call methods on that object. So assuming it's not null, we unregister the listener called sensor event listener. We say which sensor we are unregistering for, in this case the accelerometer, and then we assign null to the sensor manager at that point, and that will terminate listening for accelerometer events.